The weakest ones. And they're going to try to get the weakest ones going. And when you had $700,000 a week coming in tax-free, cash money to Chicago, there's a whole bunch of people who wanted to live large. That's a lot of money. Even at the end of his life, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz said, okay, here's the move. Black farmers are losing their land in the South. Here's what we do. We go ahead and we buy land, or we get them to grow food for us. We buy a fleet of trucks to go get the food and bring them to supermarkets that we own. That's the plan that Malcolm was working on at the end of his stay with the Nation of Islam. You know how much money that would cost? You know whose pockets that would have went into? If that money was redirected out of people's pockets and going to buying up land, buying up supermarkets, buying black-owned trucks to go get the food that's raised on black-owned land and bring it to supermarkets that's owned by black folks, by so-called black Muslims, that's serious business. That's what Muslims should be doing. Malcolm had a program. You know when Ronald Stokes got killed in L.A., you know what Malcolm wanted to do? It wasn't just go to court. Malcolm had gotten with brothers inside the nation who were ready to go take those policemen out, either at their house or at the police station. And Malcolm had promised them, we will take care of your family. The police chief of LA called Chicago, Elijah Muhammad, will you please send for Malcolm? The next thing you know, Malcolm was called back to Chicago and was sent back to New York. That affected him. Malcolm wanted the Nation of Islam injected into the civil rights movement. Can you imagine? A rich organization? The civil rights movement was basically financed by Jews, Zionist Jews. And here was a nation financed by black people with their own military wing, their own political, economic, and social structures. And Malcolm wanted that injected into the so-called civil rights movement. I said, oh, no. So Allah set up the enemies. Allah set them up by making them get rid of Malcolm. They got rid of Malcolm. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allah said, I got another plan for you. Malcolm gets kicked out, goes to Sister Ella, takes his Hajj to Mecca. When we deal with Malcolm, you got to follow Malcolm to his grave. You have to follow him to his grave. After nation, before Hajj. And you got to look at after Hajj. You got to follow him up to his grave. It's critical. 11 months and 13 days, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz was alive after he was kicked out of the Nation of Islam. 11 months and 13 days. That's not a lot of time. Of that 11 months and 13 days, he was out of the country for almost 6 months. Almost 6 months. And then 11 months and 13 days. Malcolm, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz was moving fast. Psychologically, intellectually, politically, spiritually, physically. He was moving fast. So you got to follow him up to his grave to see what he was talking about. The reason why we got to focus on Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, brothers and sisters, because Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz represents in modern day time that legacy here. That same legacy. Islam and black consciousness. Islam, international perspective, hooking up with Africa. Islam, hooking up with Asia. Because it didn't stop at Africa. Look at this package. Quran and Sunnah. Right? Base, Harlem. All right? Base is Harlem, right? Connections in Africa. But not just in Africa. Now Malcolm's dealing with other people. Asians. You know, when you have Malcolm programs, you get all kinds of different colored people there. Malcolm went through a revolution. Malcolm's revolution was going from worshiping a false god to the one God. That was his revolution. When you go from shirk to tawheed, that is a revolution. It affects your whole way of thinking. So Malcolm now is coming back, and if you check out Malcolm's speeches at the end of his life, he is always talking about Islam, but he ain't hitting it hard. Why? Because he hit it hard for 12 years and it wasn't true Islam. He hit it hard for 12 years and it wasn't true Islam. So every time when he spoke toward the end of his life, he would always say, I want to make my position clear. I'm a Muslim. I believe in Allah. He talked about the 5 pillars, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Then he'd leave it alone. Because he done hit him before. So now he has to use another approach. But Malcolm said in his works and in his speeches, that one of his intentions, of course, was to build the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Malcolm was that package, brothers and sisters, that package, that old package. Again, Islam and black consciousness. But brothers and sisters, not black consciousness as in nationalism. Not black consciousness as in nationalism. How do you know when you're practicing nationalism? One of the ways that you can tell that you're practicing nationalism, if we're dealing with Islam and black consciousness, and we're following that age-old tradition, one of the ways that we can tell that nationalism has seeped in is in our relationship with other Muslims who are not African. That's how you can tell. If we're talking to African Americans, for example, about Islam, and we're dealing with some black consciousness, and if our relationship with other Muslims who are not African are not good, and it's not brotherly, then it's nationalism. It's nationalism. If we cannot embrace other Muslims, if we can't embrace them and show them love, then we have fallen prey to nationalism. If we can't look at those Caucasian Muslims in Bosnia, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslims, and if we can't say and feel that those are our brothers and sisters, it's nationalism. It's not black consciousness, it's nationalism. If all the time we are in conflict, all those immigrants, man, I'm immigrant brothers, man, I'm immigrants, man, I'm immigrants, and it's always a conflict, it's black nationalism. It's black nationalism. We have to understand that in our attempts to bring Islam to our people, consistent with the legacy of Islam and not separating our African identity, it cannot be in the form of nationalism. Because if so, we will have fallen prey to the same thing that earlier leaders have fallen prey to. Trying to take this Islam and changing it to fit our condition. No. Just like the African Muslim slaves, we need to take this Islam and try to practice it as much as we can. Practice as much as we can of it. As much as we can. Not change it to fit the situation. Try to practice as much as we can of it. It'll be difficult, but it'll be possible. It'll be possible. Malcolm represented that tradition. Malcolm represented the tradition of African uprisings led by Muslims. African uprisings, how many non-Muslims? Malcolm.